Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be sharing my September wrap-up. Alright guys, so I am filming this video a little bit early. There is still over a week left of September when I'm filming this. However, the last week of September, I just have a lot of stuff going on. It's my birthday weekend, which is very exciting, but we also have family coming to visit, and we just have like a lot planned. So I figured now was the perfect time to film this wrap-up. Now, I did still read a decent amount of books this month. I know August was rough. It was really rough. But September, I ended up reading 13 books, which is pretty good, especially since some of them are really, really chunky. And I did go back to my fantasy romance roots, and I think that definitely helped improve my reading experience overall. I just have to accept that I love fantasy romance, and most of them I end up reading pretty high. So anyway, there's a mix of regular high fantasy. It has been a while since I read just a straight up fantasy book without any romance, and that was a 5-star read. And then fantasy romance, and then some romantic suspense, then dark romance, and then some contemporary romances, and some cowboy romances that I'm very excited to talk about. So anyway, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about all the books I read in September. So starting off with adult fantasy, we have The Will of the Many. Now, typically I would not have picked this book up. However, my husband really wanted me to read this book. Also, my friend Isa from Fun Fantasy Books, I know absolutely adored this book. So when my husband and I were driving to Virginia, which we do every year for our summer vacation or end of summer vacation, we decided to listen to this book. Oh my gosh, I am so happy I did. This book is one of my favorite books of the year. It is just so unbelievably good, and it is so impossible to summarize. I have tried about 4 times. So the best way I can describe this book is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson meets Harry Potter, kind of. So it's taking place in a school. We're following this, also kind of Fireborn, that whole Aurelian Cycle series. There's a mix. But anyway, we're following this boy who was part of the royal family. His family ended up all being killed. He was able to escape, and now he's been living as an orphan, just trying kind of to stay out of the spotlight. And in this world, people are able to give their will to people that are higher up in the social pyramid. So our main character isn't able to give will. He never went through the ceremony to be able to do this, but he doesn't want anyone else to know that. And also, if you are put in jail, instead of just staying in a jail cell, you're given over to zappers, who are creatures that are able to take your will out of you and give it to other people in the hierarchy. So anyway, that's kind of how the social structure works in this world. And someone ends up kind of discovering not exactly who our main character is, that he's the son of the executed royals, but that he is more than he appears. So this person ends up asking the main character if he will attend this institution where it pretty much is a school for all of the people that are very high up in the hierarchy's children, where they kind of learn how to do certain things. And then at the end, after they graduate, depending on what level they've reached, they're given certain jobs and roles up in the hierarchy. And some get to be in the middle of the pyramid, some at the top of the pyramid. And like I said, all of the people that are civilians are giving their will, which is kind of their soul almost, to the hierarchy. So that is essentially what is going on. We're just following this character, and it kind of has that Harry Potter feel because we are following a group of students. There is a little bit of a found family type trend going on, but there is a scene that is literally, if you are a fan of ACOTAR, and if you're watching this channel, I assume you are, where Rysand, when he snaps his finger at the end of A Court of Wings and Ruin, slight spoiler here, and he missed everybody, and you're like, man, that was badass. That happens in this book, but in graphic detail, and it's gruesome. It was so gruesome. I specifically remember it was 3 a.m. and we were driving, and that part came on, and my husband and I just looked at each other like, what the hell are we listening to? But anyway, overall, if you were a fan of Brandon Sanderson, Robert Jordan, all of that, I would definitely check out The Will of the Many. I did not know this going in. It is actually the first in a series. I thought it was a standalone. So the end leaves you with a bunch of unanswered questions, but I cannot wait for the sequel to release. Moving into fantasy romance, first up we have A Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So this book recently released. I read this the day it came out, and now that I've sat on it for a while, I think I would end up rating it 3.75, 4 stars. I had a couple issues, but overall I really like the story, and I'm very excited to read the sequel. So this book is following Callista, and in this world, the gods destroyed most of the earth, sparing a few big cities. And Callista is an orphan. She's been living with her best friend, and they've grown up on the streets essentially just trying to survive. Now, Callista is able to almost see into the future and have like prophetic type abilities because she has very intense intuition. Like her intuition really guides her. So she's able to see people that are going to pass away. She's able to see future events and things of that nature. And normally if she listens to her intuition, it works out pretty well for her. So anyway, Callista ends up becoming a courtesan to this guy. He's not a prince, but he's like somewhat high up. And they have this like mutual understanding that she will be his courtesan, but really she's going to be gathering information using her intuition. So one day a prince shows up in this town. Now the prince is part god or is a god. And he ends up being in a really tough predicament that Callista ends up saving him from. Now her intuition is telling her, hey, stay away from this guy. He's bad news. He's going to bring you doom. Like, he's great right now, but like probably don't tell him anything about yourself. And she's also keeping a couple secrets that she might know this guy from a prior event. So it's really just Callista kind of navigating her way around this prince and trying to decide if she should trust her intuition or do what she wants to do. So overall, here's the issue I think ended up happening with this book or my reading time. I read this right after finishing The Will of the Many, which I just talked about. And these are two vastly different type books. So I kept comparing the two, and that really kind of was like not fair to this book. Only because The Will of the Many has amazing world building, very action-packed. This is completely different. This is fantasy romance, JLA. She writes spice very well. I love her romances, but like world building, not the best. I will admit that, but I still have a fabulous time anytime I read her books. So overall, I love the romance in this. I kind of wanted a little bit more. I feel like this book could have been a little bit longer, which I feel like I never say with J-Law, but for this one in particular, I feel like we could have had like an extra 100 pages of the romance and them kind of getting to know each other. But overall, I'm very excited to read the sequel, and the ending of this book is perfection. And next up, I read Foxglove by Adalyn Grace. This is the sequel to Belladonna. And unfortunately, I really can't get into the plot of this just because I feel like it's going to give away a lot of spoilers if you didn't read Belladonna. But overall, I enjoyed this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I did prefer Belladonna a little bit more. I feel like this one wasn't quite as like creepy and unsettling as Belladonna. Not that Belladonna is like super horror or anything. There were just some very scary parts. This book felt a little bit more YA. We're also given an extra POV, which I'm not really sure how I felt about. Like, I don't think it really added. I mean, it was definitely necessary in the story, but I don't know how I felt about it overall. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar with the plot of Belladonna, Belladonna is following Signa. And she is this girl that when she's a baby, her mom takes her to this very lavish party. Everyone ends up being poisoned and passing away, so Death shows up in corporeal form, ready to harbor all of these souls into the afterlife. And when he touches baby Signa, he realizes that he cannot take her soul, and finds out that she actually is not able to die. So Death immediately becomes very intrigued by her and starts following her around. And as Signa is passed from different guardians to guardians, they all pass away from very interesting events. So the entire town kind of thinks that Signa is cursed. And then she ends up going off to live with some distant, very wealthy relatives, and the story kind of goes from there. So this book kind of answered some questions to Signa's past, and overall, it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm loving this author's writing, super atmospheric, and this is the perfect book for October. And next up, we have a paranormal romance, Her Soul for Revenge. So this is the sequel to Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRoux, and I absolutely adored this book. It had all the same creepy vibes as the first book, except I love the heroine in this book so much more than the first. So Juniper, at the start of our story, is this teenage girl. She's friends with like one of these really popular girls, and one night this popular girl kind of sets her up to be sacrificed by the entire community and given over to this Cthulhu-type monster. Now, Juniper is able to actually escape, despite the fact that she's stalked by the demon in the first book. So she's able to escape, but no one believes that she was abducted and attempted to be sacrificed. So I think she's in a mental institution for a little bit. She ends up escaping. And she's pretty much plagued by demons and monsters, and she just tries to survive to the best of her ability. Well, one day she runs into Zane, who is a demon, and he loves collecting like very hard to find souls, and he loves Juniper Soul because she is such a badass, and he's like, hey, if you make a deal with me, give me your soul, I'll help you kill everyone that has wronged you. And Juniper's like, hell yeah, let's do this. They have an awesome, very fun, spicy time. Zane realizes that he might like Juniper a little bit more, not just her soul, but actually her as a person, and they both try to take down this cult, and it is glorious and so much fun, and I highly recommend. And the third book, I think it's called A Soul of a Witch, recently released. So as soon as that audiobook is available, I am definitely going to read it. And next up is a shifter romance. So I read Rabid by Ivy Asher and Raven Kennedy. So first up, this cover is just absolutely stunning. I'm obsessed. But this was such a fun story. So we are following Seneca, and Seneca is a shifter, and she's part of this very patriarchal pack. Her mother has recently passed away, and the alpha of her pack wants Seneca to be his mate, despite the fact that Seneca finds him absolutely repulsive. So unfortunately, all this is happening right before a ceremony that's going to turn Seneca into a werewolf. It's where she essentially finds her werewolf spirit, and it takes over her body. However, during this ceremony, something goes wrong. The alpha ends up biting Seneca, tries to claim her during the ceremony while she's passed out, and she wakes up rabid, which means her werewolf and her never like really fully joined like in unity. So because she's rabid, she is pretty much superpowered and is attacking everybody. So the alpha of the pack decides that he wants to get rid of her. So he ends up drugging Seneca and dumping her in this wooded area that is said to be home to this very barbaric clan of werewolves that kill everyone that like comes into their territory. And the story goes from there, and it is great. It was so much fun. I read this book in one sitting. Highly recommend, and perfect for spooky season. And moving into dark romance, first up we have Even If It Hurts by Sam Mariano. So I've been really nervous to pick this up because this does feature characters in high school. However, you're going to forget they're in high school real quick. So we're following our main character, Aubrey, and her mother has been diagnosed with very aggressive cancer. So she's really taken a backseat in terms of like her social life. She really just cares about taking care of her mother and trying to spend as much time with her as possible. Now she goes to this very elite high school where everyone is filthy rich, and she ends up angering the super popular like pretty girl in this high school. So that girl, we find out, is actually a psychopath, and she has a psychotic boyfriend as well. So she ends up inviting Aubrey to a party where she ends up throwing her into a pool knowing that she can't swim. And her boyfriend, the popular girl's boyfriend, Dare, ends up jumping in and saving Aubrey. So then Dare and the popular girl come up with this idea that Dare is going to fake date Aubrey and then break her heart and get revenge. So it is their like kind of fake dating romance. You're really going to question, is Dare actually falling in love with Aubrey? Is he capable of that? But when I tell you this main character is unhinged, he's insane. So I've read a lot of dark romances, but I've never read like someone who really comes off as like a complete sociopath and does not have any sort of sympathy or empathy. And that's what this character is. So like I said, you forget he is in high school real quick because he's doing all of these absolutely deplorable things. But I am still not sure how I feel about this as a romance, because there's a part in the middle of this book, I actually was talking to my friend Sabrina while I was reading this, where I literally said, I don't know if I want these two to be together at the end or if I want the main character Aubrey just to kill this guy so he doesn't hurt people in the future. Like, it was a very interesting read. But I still loved it. I think I ended up giving it 4.75 stars. So if you were looking for a very dark, spicy high school romance, definitely check this book out. And next up, I read Stolen Touches, and this is book 5 in the Perfectly Imperfect Mafia romance series. That is my favorite Mafia series of all time. I adore these books. Every book gets better and better. I loved this one so much. So this is following Milene and Salvatore. So at the start of our story, we find out that Milene, who's actually the sister of Bianca, who's the main character of book 2, she has gone off to New York City to practice medicine, but hasn't told her family because she is part of the Cosa Nostra and she is not supposed to be in New York City where there's a different mafia family ruling. So anyway, after birthing a baby in someone's car, she ends up asking a pedestrian, or what she thinks is a pedestrian, for his jacket That pedestrian ends up being Salvatore, the head of the New York Mafia, and he immediately has quite an interest in this very pretty nurse. So he ends up becoming completely obsessed with her, and because he is in her territory, he contacts her brother and says, hey, I'm either going to kill your sister or she's going to marry me. And he's like, I guess she's going to marry you. And it is their arranged marriage, and it is so good. So Salvatore suffers from, I don't think they ever exactly say, but he definitely has a lot of anxiety. Milene, I think, says OCD a few times, but then he denies it. So he is trying to deal with that, and Milene is just trying to deal with the fact that she wants nothing to do with the Mafia and is now married to a Mafia boss. So overall, all of these books are absolutely fabulous and highly recommend if you are a fan of Mafia romance. And next up is a novella, and I completely picked this up on a whim, and it's Hold by Claire Kent. So Jen from the Book Refuge had recommended me this book a while ago, and I forget what I was doing. I didn't have a lot of time, and I was looking for like a quick novella. I really liked this, and I wasn't expecting to. So we're following this girl that is being sent to prison, and this prison is on, it's like a prison planet type thing that's like kind of underground, whatever, not really important. But she gets sent to this prison, and she finds out that in this prison, all of the inmates are pretty much able to do what they please. So the women have it really bad, because the men, as soon as women get there, the women are essentially claimed by like the most powerful guy in the prison. So the jail guard or whatever tells the main character, hey, when you get down there, find the most powerful guy that you can deal with sleeping with, and partner up with him, or else you're toast, you're gonna die. So our main character ends up meeting this guy who has his own like locked cell. He seems pretty safe, he's pretty attractive, and she offers herself up to him, and it is their romance. And it is really good. So very quick read, but I really enjoyed it and can't wait to read more from this author. And next up is a romantic suspense. It is Beyond the Thistles, and this is by Samantha Young. And this is the first book in the Highland something. It might just be the Highlands, but it's a series of romantic suspense books. But anyway, this first one was really good. Single mother, she ended up having her daughter when she was really young, I think 16. And the father of her daughter is very abusive. So she ends up fleeing and goes to Scotland, hoping that her baby daddy doesn't find her and try to kill her and or take her daughter. So anyway, she's working as a maid in this like luxury hotel, and weird things start happening with one of the guests. So she ends up befriending this bodyguard who is Scottish. He works at the hotel, and he's unbelievably attractive. They have a lot of like sexual chemistry, but he's really trying hard not to act on it. He's off of relationships, but they can't really stop being around each other. So it is their romance, and it was so good. This is another book that I ended up reading in like a half a day. It was very well paced, and I absolutely love the romance, and pretty much any single parent romance I really end up enjoying. So anyway, if you're looking for a romantic suspense, definitely check out Beyond the Thistles, and the audiobook is really good. And last up for contemporary romance, I read 3 books in the Chestnut Springs Cowboy Romance series by Elsie Silver. Oh my goodness, I am officially a cowboy romance fan, and I never thought that would happen. So I read Flawless earlier this year, and I did not like it. I don't know what it was about it. I just didn't love that romance. But a bunch of my friends have been raving about this series, and one of them convinced me to pick up Heartless by Elsie Silver, knowing that it was single dad and age gap. And oh my gosh, I'm so happy I read this book. This book was so good. This is a contender for best book of the year. So this book is single father. We're following Kate Eaton. And then he ends up hiring this nanny who's quite a free spirit, and it is their romance. And then we have Powerless, which is friends, kind of friends to lovers. This one isn't very cowboy forward. The main hero in this is actually a hockey player, but still, I adored their romance. And my second favorite one in the series is Reckless. So this is surprise pregnancy, and it's done so well. So honestly, this book has so many tropes that I absolutely hate. I don't like surprise pregnancy. Check trigger warnings. This book also kind of deals with infertility and things of that nature, which I don't normally feel comfortable reading. However, I think it was done very well in this book, and I ended up absolutely loving it. So overall, I've been loving the Chestnut Spring series, and I cannot wait to read Hopeless when it releases in October. Alright guys, those are all the books I read in September. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of the books I mentioned, and also what was your absolute favorite read of September. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye!